Hi, Rob B here with Rob D, and you are listening to episode 209 of the Property Podcast. This week we look at the spring budget. What's happened for property investors? Nothing. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Yeah, that is about the size of it. But it's okay. We have actually dug a bit deeper and we have found some points of interest for property investors. But hey, if our only complaint is that Philip Hammond's made it difficult for us to put a podcast episode together, then we should count ourselves very lucky. So we're going to be talking about that. We've got a great news story and a couple of handy resources as well. So it is going to be a super useful episode, as always. But also, as always, we should start by getting caught up on what's been happening over the last week. And Rob, our team has gone through a bit of a growth spurt.
Yeah, RMP and Yellow both growing. In the last 10 days, 4 new starters. So at RMP, hello to Julia and hello to Krista.
And at Yellow, hello to Donna and to Nicole. So in the budget, we were hearing about how employment is at its best ever. I think we might be the reason why.
Single-handedly pushing the economy forward. Yeah, our egos, if you thought they couldn't get any bigger, we've just took it to the next level. But don't worry, we will compensate with some fantastic resources. Rob and I have been very busy beavering away creating courses for the Property Hub. These are free courses. If you haven't checked the ones that are there already, you're mad. They're free. They're really good. Go and take advantage of them. At thepropertyhub.net/courses. There's loads of free stuff there already, but we've made a commitment to ourselves that we're going to bring you even more this year. And the next one will be up live in the next few weeks. We'll let you know when it happens, but lots happening on the site, so make sure you go and check it out.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on from our news to general news. And Rob, I've never seen a news story that plays to your interests better than this one. This is from Metro. World's fastest hover train could go from Liverpool to Manchester in 7 minutes. We've got transport, we've got fundamentals, we've got trains, we've got Liverpool, we've got Manchester. What more do you want?
I know, I nearly exploded when I read this one. This is a story that gets me excited, but then before we all start getting excited, well, actually, let's get excited first. So, the fastest passenger train in the world could be heading to Liverpool and Manchester if revolutionary plans go ahead. The maglev train could reach speeds of 350 miles per hour and travel the 31 miles between the cities, bringing the time down to 7 minutes. So, a 7-minute journey from Liverpool to Manchester. Now, I went on the fastest train this week from Liverpool to Manchester. It's no great shakes, it's a bit rocky, and it took best part of 40 minutes. Not fantastic. That is improving with HS3, but imagine this, Rob. I've spent plenty of time imagining this.
I'm sure you have, but it would be absolutely brilliant. It's you flagged up the word could, which I think is the key word here. How likely is this to actually happen? Pretty unlikely, I would say. But it would be super exciting if it did. And it also says they could extend it to Hull and you could get to Hull in 29 minutes or away from Hull in 29 minutes, depending on how you look at it. But to connect those cities across the north, we were talking before we started recording about how massive that would be. So whether it happens now or in 10 years, at some point, something like this needs to happen and will happen. And it's going to make a massive difference.
It's incredible. I mean, I know it's a big could, but I'm looking into this further. And you could get from Liverpool to Manchester in 7 minutes. So it's just bonkers to think about. But Liverpool to Leeds would be 16 minutes. It's the best part of 2 hours now, which the fact that it's the best part of 2 hours is bonkers. You wonder why we go on about the Northern Powerhouse. These cities have done so well with crap transport links. When HS3 goes in, imagine the difference it's going to make. But it's really, at the very least, interesting that stuff like this is being proposed because it would work so well. It costs a lot of money. And knowing our governments across the board, it would take about 60 years to implement, but still exciting to read nevertheless.
And speaking of government, that takes us on to our topic of the week, the spring budget. So this is a spring budget because we're lucky enough to get 2 budgets this year. So we're going to have 2 nail-biting Wednesday afternoons when Philip Hammond stands up and tells us what he's got planned. So the budget proper from now on is going to be in the autumn. So this was always intended to be just sort of like a little mini budget, a budgetette, if you will. So we weren't expecting anything huge. What we got was really nothing huge. The interesting thing about it, like we've been digging deep to try and find some things to say about it. We have got some. But what I thought was really interesting was like people were speculating about rolling back on the stamp duty, rolling back on the mortgage relief. Never really thought that was going to happen. But not only did he not do that, he actually didn't mention housing at all at any point, which I just thought was really strange.
It is strange based on previous budgets, but welcome, I guess. It seems in the past, whenever he's mentioned it, it's not been in the best light, and the proposals to fix things in the housing sector haven't been that fantastic. So I'm glad we can take a pass on it this time round. But as you say, Rob, there are other bits and pieces that will affect property investors. So for those people investing in limited companies, we already knew this was happening already, but he's reaffirmed it. That corporation tax will fall to 19% in April. And then in 2020, it will fall to 17%, currently at 20%, which is actually quite competitive already. It's going to be one of the most competitive countries in the world for corporation tax, which has wider implications for the economy, I think mainly positive. But for property investors, those who have properties in a limited company, it ultimately means less tax to pay.
It does, but unfortunately there was a bit of bad news for people who are holding properties in a company to go along with that. Nothing too severe, but at the moment you get a tax-free dividend allowance as a company director. That means that you can take the first £5,000 of dividends per year tax-free. That's being reduced to £2,000 from April 2018. So when we've talked about the whole limited company debate in the past, we always say that the issue is getting money out of the company. So if you're willing to let the money build up, that's great. If you actually want to take it as income, then you'll end up paying a fairly hefty tax on the dividends. Previously, you would have the first 5k free, which would help. So if you were a couple, you could take 10k and you'd have that. If you want to just draw a bit of income, that would be fine. Now it's gone down to 2k, so 4 for a couple, which is not as good at all. So if this is the worst thing that we can find, then it means it was a pretty good budget, but it's still a little bit annoying. Also a bit annoying, because if you ask me, it's a little bit cheeky, because the reason that that dividend allowance came in, which was only a year ago, it came in because they jacked up the rates for taking dividends. So that was to compensate. But now that's gone away. You still have the higher rates for dividends, so you end up worse off. So it's all a bit sneaky, but never mind, not really going to move the needle for anyone.
An admin one now. Not one that's going to rock anyone's world, but important to know. That's an extension until 2019, until landlords need to keep a digital record of their accounts and send quarterly updates to the HMRC. So this has just been delayed and pushed back a little bit further because they feel that there's not been enough education around this. People aren't ready for it. Not a biggie. It's more of an admin point. Most people probably aren't even aware that they were going digital, but I think that's the point, and that's why it's been pushed back.
Yeah, exactly that. And something else that actually wasn't even mentioned in the budget, but was in the small print. So I told you I had to dig deep to try and find some things of relevance here. Rent a room relief. So this is the money that you get if you're renting out a room in your own home. You get a tax-free amount. It's around about £7,000. I can't remember exactly how much it is. But nothing firm, but the government has said they're going to consult on proposals to redesign rent-a-room relief to ensure that it's better targeted to support longer-term lettings. They say this will align the relief more closely with its intended purpose to increase the supply of affordable long-term lodgings. So basically what this is saying is because of the rise of Airbnb and things like that, you get people who are renting out a room in their own home by the night to people on Airbnb or wherever. They're claiming the rent-a-room relief on that and getting it tax-free. That's not what it was intended for. It's meant to be if you've got a lodger for months. So they're looking at doing something with that. So nothing firm on that one yet. There'll be a consultation. Maybe we'll hear more about that in the autumn.
So ultimately, a boring budget, but sometimes boring budgets are best. Exciting, yes, it gives us a podcast to fill, but it often means we're going to be paying more tax. So for once, I think we're happy with a boring budget, but we've got something for you to jazz this episode up. The Northern Powerhouse, you've heard of that. It's getting all the headlines. Rob, the Midlands, they've noticed. They're not going to miss out. They've got their own version.
Yes, from the makers of the Northern Powerhouse, we bring you the Midlands Engine. Yeah.
I hope this isn't going to be like Jurassic Park 2, which was a very disappointing follow-up.
Yeah, I'm wondering what every other region's going to do to try and get in on this. Yeah, the Midlands Engine at the moment seems like mostly a slogan. really. I've had a look at the website. I can't really see anything. So Northern Powerhouse site is one of those things that sounds a bit naff, but when you look into it, there's actually loads of infrastructure investment and lots of things going on. At the moment, Midlands Engine seems to be a phrase and a website. Can't really see a lot going on, but maybe it is just the start. But it's easy to be a bit sniffy about these things, which is why I have. But I do like the focus on the regions. And he also did mention in the sort of the preamble to the budget how some of the drop in unemployment had been fastest in the north and sort of various other things. So I like the fact that the regions are getting mentioned and they're getting some attention. So maybe this Midlands Engine will turn into something. We'll have to see.
Hopefully. As you say, lacks a bit of substance at the moment, but branding is the start, and we'll see where we go from here. But it can only be a positive step. There's lots going on in the Midlands, and it is economically a very strong area. So I think they've really suffered from branding issues in the past and attracting attention. So fingers crossed, this could be a step in the right direction. So as we've mentioned, the budget, there's not a lot to cover there. But don't worry, we've got 2 resources to make up for a lacklustre budget. And of course that will come after our review. And bear with me, because this one's a biggie but a goodie. So thank you to Dan. Dan says the property podcast will appeal to newbie property investors and the experienced alike, with earlier shows covering the basics of property, such as leverage, below market value, assessing those important fundamentals. Revisiting these topics has really helped to refine my property investment strategy and has helped us double our portfolio in the last year. Of particular interest to serious investors is the way the podcast keeps us updated with all the economic and political changes and their influence on the property and mortgage markets. It also covers important legal changes that affect all the landlords. The show covers complicated issues and concepts too, but always manages to keep these topics very accessible. Quite a skill. It doesn't end with just the podcast though. There's a complimentary range of online courses, links to useful resources, and online community at the Property Hub, monthly meetups throughout the UK and beyond, which are all completely free. A big thanks to Rob and Rob and their behind-the-scenes team for creating a wonderful podcast, and I look forward to many more in the future. Did I mention the fundamentals? You did, Dan. You did. And that's why I read it out. Thank you very much, Dan. And a thank you. We probably don't mention it enough, Rob. Well, maybe we do, but I don't feel we can ever mention it enough, to our amazing team in the background who help us do all these wonderful things. It's not just us two. It's impressive people behind us that allow us to do these exciting things.
Yeah, very much so. And so thank you to them, and thank you to our reviewers as well. Whether it's a long one like that or a short one, we're always very happy to receive your reviews, as long as they've got 5 stars in front of them. Okay, so on to our resource of the week, or our pair of resources of the week, as promised. So both of these are related to your credit file. That's exciting, isn't it? Well, not particularly, but it's very important. We've talked about this a few times. If you're going to be applying for mortgages, which most people probably are, it's really important to keep an eye on your credit score and make sure that there's nothing popping up on there that shouldn't be. And to just kind of get a snapshot of the way that lenders will be viewing you. It used to be a bit of a pain to get access to this data, but luckily now it's getting a lot easier, and there's a couple of free tools that you can use. The first one is from Money Saving Expert, and it's what they're calling Credit Club. It's pretty new. What it does is it brings together your credit report. They give you their own affordability score. So they give you an idea of how much they think you'd be able to borrow. They look at your credit utilization, which is basically like sort of like how much debt do you have access to and how much are you using, and kind of builds on some other stuff on top of that as well. So I'm a fan of Money Saving Expert in general. I think they do some really good stuff. And this seems like one of those things that's pretty useful to just sign up to once, and then it's done, and every so often they'll send you an email and tell you if anything relevant has happened. And Rob, you pointed out to me that there's another way of getting your free credit score, which you used to have to pay for, and now it's free.
Yeah, Experian, which was at least £15 a month to get your credit score, is now free. So you can get an updated score, and it will always be free. No catches, well, a little bit. What they do instead is they've realised they make more money by recommending credit cards that you are creditworthy for, and mortgages and so on. So they'll actually give you the information for free now. So you can go to experian.co.uk, check that out, and get your free credit score that way too. It used to be over £15 a month, so it's quite a change in tactics for them and I want to check out as well. If it's free, you may as well.
Yep, definitely. So you can find the links to those as well as our news story over at the show notes this week, which are at thepropertyhub.net/springbudget2017.
Okay, well, that's us. Short and sweet, but don't worry, we'll make it up to you. We'll come back next Tuesday with Ask Rob and Rob, and next Thursday with a more impactful property podcast. But until then, everyone, have a great time. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. For show notes, all our past episodes, and to leave a review, go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast.